Hello, artists and art lovers. It's Kay Ryan Hennessy, president at TAG Gallery, and I'm here with our latest installment of TAG Bytes. With me in the gallery and now showing is Damon Reinagle. Damon's show is Hallucinations, and it is a wild ride through his thoughts, his musings, with a little bit of Endangered Species thrown in. And we're going to talk about what that artwork means to Damon and how he comes to do his art. Damon, thanks for being here in the gallery. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. My pleasure to be here, Ryan.
Awesome, thank you. I'm really drawn to the artwork in your show. You do, and I've loved this in fantasy art, alternate reality art that's existed for quite some time, is your spirals, the spins of liquidity and gaseous forms, the way you make hair kind of intertwine, those types of things. They really speak to me, and they are showing in full force throughout Hallucinations, especially in the titular piece, Hallucinations.
Right.
So what brought this show to mind? What made Hallucinations real for you?
Well, if we can back up just a little bit. Of course, I'm a sort of a child of the 60s and 70s, and so I draw some of that hallucinatory inspiration from that time period. And then the jaguar images, and in my earlier shows, the tiger images, and I have one behind me. I got involved with a program at my school, which was all about water, believe it or not, and conservation. And so therefore, the more I researched to find out info for the kids, the more I realized I didn't really know very much about endangered species and why they become endangered, and deforestation and all of those horrific things that humans do to the planet to diminish the population of the animals that everybody just goes ooh and ah, and want to see them at the zoo and all of that kind of stuff. So that's I've always kind of thrown in some animal imagery, and then as far as the swirling, I've always been drawn to that. Again, going back to the 60s and tie-dye and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And then fairy tales have always attracted my eye, especially since I was an art teacher and I'm married to a kindergarten teacher, and she's constantly sharing children's books with me.
Right.
And then I had some, of course, favorites like Maurice Sendak. I don't know if you know him. But there's just a bunch of other ones. Leo and Diane Dillon are another married couple. They're deceased now, unfortunately, but just some terrific illustrators that I think I've absorbed some of the magic and try to portray that in my images as well.
Yeah, it really comes across. I mean, both the history, and I love that imagery, right? And especially that fantasy 60s imagery that incorporates these spirals, right? That are really influenced by Art Deco from the 1920s. And seeing that history carry through and still be alive in paintings today, I really love it. It brings me a ton of joy.
I'm glad.
And I really love how you have a contemporary spin on it by using the color palettes really native to California, right? What is it about color that really inspires you?
Yeah, well, let's talk about, you said there was a little contemporary flair in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm heavily influenced by James Jean. I don't know if people out there know who James Jean is, but he's a contemporary artist and very prolific, and has all these women and young children in postures that have all these swirling shapes and flowers around them, and they're very bright and colorful. Audrey Kawasaki is one of my favorites, and then Yoshitaka Amano, who was the artist who originally did Final Fantasy.
Oh, okay.
And I love his stuff. So I mix my roots with more contemporary living people.
Absolutely.
And their color palettes and their designs.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think, I don't call it stealing. Because obviously, if you compare some of my things with theirs, it's like way different.
Well, and absolutely, and part of art is having a dialogue with the art that's being made or has been made previously, right?
Right.
So no, I don't. What is stealing? But that's a whole different topic. So you did mention earlier, and there are quite a number of them in your artworks. Why does the endangered species play so heavily in your visual language?
I think that an animal image is much like a portrait or face that everyone identifies with, first of all. There's something magical. I've been researching it, and I even started a children's book on the Amazon and the animals interacting and deforestation and trying to push that point across. It hasn't been picked up by anybody yet, but hopefully someday it will be. That's my dream. I never thought I'd be in a gallery before, and I am, so things are possible. But as far as the animal imagery, I love stenciling, and the tiger with the stripes is kind of a natural for cutting into the heavy board to make a stencil. It takes a while to do it, and this guy actually is a stencil. I don't know if you can tell that from looking, but yeah, I've been drawn to that imagery to include it in my work, and probably will continue to do that. Even as you look at these, the hallucinogenic element is there, but I'm also splicing in some of my older images.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's interesting that you speak of the animals as being portraiture, because you do use portraiture in your kind of mythic, surreal scapes, right?
Exactly.
Are the portraits people specifically? Do you have someone in mind, or what drives the shape of each portrait?
I know, it just sort of, I think, spontaneously happens. I do use reference pictures quite a bit. I spend a lot of time, on the internet, like everybody else does, but specifically looking for, ooh, that face has a lighting in that, or whatever attracts me, and then I will sketch from that and obviously change it enough that it's not a lift. I don't use real models very much. Used to, but not that much. Used to use my wife as a model years ago all the time, but not so much anymore. But yeah, I love incorporating the faces and the animals with all the eternity stuff.
And you use quite a lot of materials. In this show, you have some printed matting that you've then painted original on top of the prints, which are fantastic.
Oh, right, the yoga mats.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like working on that surface. It's pixelated, kind of. Already.
Absolutely, yes.
Tiny little squares, and it has a nice feel to it as you apply the paint, and you can use permanent markers on it, and it takes the marker really well to emphasize some dark or highlighted or brighter areas. Yeah, I just really like it.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes for a really interesting canvas. And it's kind of a joy in the mix of materials, because you're painting on board, you're painting on the yoga mats, you're painting on paper, you're painting on canvas. So it's really, we can see that you love your materials and experimenting with different things. Okay, so I do have one final question for you, and it's about the piece behind you, which is Golden Tiger. And it's a beautiful piece. I love the texturality of it, and the support is a board, and it's acrylic paints, and you've used the stencil, and you hand painted in your swirls. But to me, there's some collage-like elements going on in here. Are you layering papers or layering other materials?
I am. What's interesting is on some of the other, I don't think I have any up in this show, but on some of the earlier Endangered Species paintings, I would throw and paint flow down the canvas, and sometimes it was standing up, and sometimes it was laying down on a big table, supported by some wood slats, and under it, some brown butcher paper, so I don't have a huge mess. So after doing about a dozen of those paintings and pulling out those sheets, and then I looked over and I had like, I don't know, about a dozen sheets of all this spattered drip paint with all these interesting things happening accidentally. And then when I started to do the image of the stencil tiger there, I thought, well, I'm going to cut up a couple of these things and see how I can patch in things.
Yeah.
And it really, so this one kind of spontaneously grew out of something else, whereas that one,
Right.
I had a full-blown drawing of it and I knew where I was going with it, and so it was a matter of drawing it and then adding all this frills and painting it, whereas this one developed more spontaneously, and actually was a whole lot more fun. All your arts out there know what I mean, and it wasn't quite so much of a struggle. But I'm happy that you noted that, and there's something about actually being able to touch this,
Yes.
which is kind of cool too, and seeing that this is separated from that, and the original board underneath was just painted this gold color. A lot of little nuances in the collage, leaving it actually blank and then taking. Did you see what that is? Emery paper. I love that surface, that rich black. So anyway, that's.
Yeah, no,
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, there's a wonderful texturality to so many of your pieces, and even when you have an intention and you go with the intention, it still has quite the drama and fluidity to what you're doing, and it's really masterful that you can do both, right? That you can have these fun and experimental pieces, but also these
so much.
Intense, thoughtful, and well-planned pieces as well. And they both have their value and place.
Right. Just one more like sidebar. When I was in undergraduate school, in a drawing class, I apparently was pretty good at drawing a figure, and the professor would compliment me, and then I tried to do some sort of more non-objective, sort of almost abstract things, and he pulled me aside one day and he said, well, I think you're at a point where you need to decide. You need to decide, are you going to go realistic, or are you going to go totally non-objective and just be out there in this other world? And I always remember that, and then but I think to myself, I can still do both anyway.
Absolutely.
And just because you're a professor at a college doesn't mean you know everything about your person. So try not to judge people and the way they approach their art, because there's great art, there's good art, there's bad art, there's silly art. It's all art.
Right.
It's all art.
It's all art, and we're all having fun with it. Well, thanks again, Damon. Thanks for coming in, for talking about your art, social distancing with us here in the gallery. I appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us on TAG Bytes. You can find more about all of our TAG artists, including Damon Reinagle, on taggallery.net. Just visit our artist page, and feel free to visit all around the website. We've got a host of historic shows to share with you, as well as those that are currently exhibiting. See you all soon.